Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to give it a couple more minutes for more folks to join, or another minute for folks to join. Natalie and I are here with you and some other members of our team. So while we're waiting for other people to come in, raise your hand if you were able to attend the first webinar in our series. Let's see how many repeats we have here. I'm not seeing any. Oh, yeah, I was there. Rachel was there. Yeah, no hands raised. This is a first for everyone, maybe.
Great. Getting the lowdown on
Yeah.
compliance.
Well, looking at the list of people who are in the participants, I don't think many would need the why electrify
Yep.
webinar. They know. Okay. Well, I say let's go ahead and get started. Um, So welcome to 3CE's Fleet Electrification webinar series. In this second webinar, we are going to be tackling the weighty topic of complying with EV mandates. My name is Judy Young, and I'm the account manager for the 35 cities and counties member agencies that make up Central Coast Community Energy, or 3CE. Over the next half hour or so, we are going to offer valuable insights into how the staff of those member agencies can meet and maintain compliance with the California Air Resources Board's Advanced Clean Fleets ruling. You will learn from our consultants about the steps to take to ensure that your fleet stays ahead of the curve with regulatory requirements. And let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So looking ahead, future webinars in this series will focus on topics such as providing guidance on available public funds to finance your fleet transition to electric, and case studies from real Plan Your Fleet 3CE program engagements with your neighboring cities and counties, giving you a firsthand look at how the program works and the outcomes that you can expect. So let's go ahead and dive in today. Here's Natalie Hanson, Director of Energy Programs with Optiny, and our Fleet Electrification Program Lead Consultant. Take it away, Natalie.
Thank you, Judy. Thanks everyone for joining us. Some familiar faces and names on the attendee list and some new folks. So hopefully, if you are not already engaged with 3CE's Plan Your Fleet program, this helps you understand some of the value add that 3CE brings by offering that technical assistance. So I'm just going to start with a general overview of the kind of journey of fleet electrification and where Plan Your Fleet and the other 3CE programs come in here. So Plan Your Fleet is really the initial stages of fleet electrification. We don't really want to go off on an adventure without a plan in place and without a roadmap. So 3CE's Plan Your Fleet program will support you through data collection, all the way to putting together engineered site designs for EV charging projects, creating a fleet electrification timeline, and all those necessary planning steps. 3CE also provides funding for EV charging infrastructure and for electric vehicles. So both of those programs are also offered through 3CE, and you should definitely be accessing them or at least reaching out to Judy to ask questions if you haven't already. And so the goal here is for Plan Your Fleet to help you to essentially set you up to be able to apply for the Charge Your Fleet and Electrify Your Fleet funds from 3CE. It's really a funnel to get there. It's not required, but it is valuable. And then Plan Your Fleet also supports ongoing tasks for public agencies like your CARB reporting, grant applications, data upkeep, assessing the market, et cetera. So things that come after the planning phase, and even after construction sometimes. So when we're talking about compliance, we talked a little bit about advanced clean fleets and what it is in general last webinar, but I do want to rehash sort of the definitions here. When people are first given, information about advanced clean fleets, and their main questions are what vehicles are subject to the mandate, and how much of my fleet, or sorry, what agencies are subject to the mandate and what vehicles are subject to the mandate. So first of all, California Air Resource Board puts state and local governments in its own category for compliance with advanced clean fleets, and the mechanics of compliance are specific for state and local governments. You'll also hear high priority fleets when you're looking into advanced clean fleets. High priority fleets are vendors like Amazon potentially, or some other companies like that. And then federal fleets are federal agencies. Now, I do want to put a strong note here. You may, in the coming months, see information about an EPA waiver that does or does not support enforcement of advanced clean fleets. That's for high priority and federal. So no matter what, CARB will implement advanced clean fleets for the state and local governments. So don't get tricked into thinking you're not subject to it because of an EPA waiver. So just wanted to put that out there. State and local governments include city, county, special district, and state agencies. And the fleet vehicles that are impacted by advanced clean fleets are the medium and heavy duty vehicles with the gross vehicle weight rating of more than 8,500 pounds. So sometimes that doesn't tell people enough. So I wanted to put some examples out here. We're looking at things like a Ford Expedition, a Ford F-250, 350, 450, Chevy Silverado, or GMC Sierra 2500, 3500, and so on. And then the same with the Ram 2500 and up. So those are the bigger trucks, not the F-150s, but everything larger than that will be impacted by advanced clean fleets. There are multiple paths for compliance with advanced clean fleets. The first one that we're going to talk about today is the ZEV purchase schedule, and this is the default option. And I'm going to show you a little bit of a comparison between the two options for compliance. This one is the simpler option and is the one that we feel is more often relevant to the agencies we're working with. Really, the way this one works is just that starting in 2024, 50% of new purchases of medium and heavy duty vehicles in your fleet must be either zero emission or near zero emission vehicles. So NZEV is like a plug-in hybrid, as an example. And California Air Resource Board will accept an NZEV as a replacement until 2035. So if there are opportunities where a plug-in hybrid makes more sense for the duty cycle of a specific vehicle, that's absolutely an option to replace at this point. Starting in 2027, 100% of those new purchases of medium and heavy duty vehicles have to be ZEVs or NZEVs. Same thing here, plug-in hybrids are okay until 2035. And then in 2035, the state of California is aiming to have 100% of its of vehicle sales in the state will be electric vehicles or ZEVs. So that is mandated at the manufacturer level, but it will impact the vehicles that you can reasonably buy on the market in California. So that, believe it or not, is the simpler of the two compliance options. The second compliance option or pathway is the ZEV milestones option. This one requires a little bit more administrative effort and is something you can opt into until I believe it's the 1st of January of 2030, but we'll confirm that on the next slide. So the way that this one works is that we've got milestone groups of vehicles. Likely most of your vehicles for state and local governments are going to be in milestone group 1 or 2. Um, and so this means that in 2025, 10% of your fleet must be zero emission. In 2020, if you're a milestone group 1 vehicle, for milestone group 2, 10% of the fleet must be EVs starting in 2027, and those numbers increase as time goes on. So this one is trickier. It requires kind of subdividing your fleet and then monitoring the progress and kind of projecting the progress forward so that you're hitting these milestone numbers. Quick comparison between the two, just because I know that it can be, it might sound like I'm saying some of the same things. So for the ZEV purchase schedule, as I said, this is the default option and it's a lot simpler. It looks at purchasing a certain percentage of EVs. So if you were to purchase no vehicles at all in the next 5 years, that means you don't have to buy a single EV, for example. When you do purchase new vehicles, though, 50% of the medium and heavy duty have to be ZEVs. Your city or county replacement schedule or your vehicle retirement policy remains unchanged. You can follow that as you always would. Under the ZEV milestones option, you have to opt in before January 1st of 2030. So right now, everybody would be in the ZEV purchase schedule unless you've changed to the ZEV milestones option. It does, as I mentioned, require more fleet oversight. You must meet a certain percentage of EVs. So the reason we are specifying this is because it could result in early vehicle retirement. If you arrive at a year where your percentage increases in the number of vehicles you have to have, it might mean that you just have to swap an internal combustion engine for a new EV that you didn't necessarily need because you have to meet that milestone, those milestones that were on the last slide. So just be cognizant of that. If you're considering opting in, that we should do some forward planning to make sure that you've got kind of all of your pieces in place into the future. So as I said, the ZEV purchase schedule is usually our recommended approach. We've crunched the numbers, we've looked at the administrative burden, and in almost all cases, the ZEV purchase schedule is a better option for public agencies. So if you are considering an expansion to the fleet or you need to replace some vehicles, you've got a few options. Depending on the vehicle, you may be able to receive an exemption or an extension, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But that would have to be approved, and there's an application process for that with CARB. If you are interested in downsizing the fleet, you may downsize some of your F-250s, for example, to an F-150, and then it's no longer a medium or heavy duty vehicle, and then you don't have to, you wouldn't be required to electrify it under the mandate. And likely an F-150 EV is going to be a lot more cost effective than an F-250 EV if the responsibility of the vehicle can be met with a 150. You may purchase plug-in hybrid vehicles for the added for fleet expansions or for replacements. And if you can't do any of those things, then you have to follow the ZEV purchase schedule or opt into the ZEV milestones option. There is a pretty full list of exemptions and extensions. So we've got some categories to talk about here just so that everybody is on the same page about where exemptions or extensions come into play. For state and local governments, there are 5 main areas. So we've got a ZEV purchase exemption, which means that there is no vehicle on the market that can replace the vehicle that you need to replace with that as an EV. So some examples as of today include a dump truck or a flatbed or a street sweeper. There is a street sweeper on the market, but CARB hasn't put that yet in there. They haven't taken it off the exemption list. So you'll notice that a lot of these are common vehicles that we've listed, but are more specialty, heavier duty, and really it's just that the market is not ready to support widespread adoption of these models. That doesn't mean that you can't purchase an EV street sweeper, for example, but it just means that you're not required to at this point. CARB reserves the right to update this list at any time. We don't have any sense of how frequently or infrequently they will be updating the list of exemptions available, but we could probably expect every year or so. There's a daily usage exemption, which means that the vehicle's daily mileage or daily usage exceeds what is available on the market. So if we have a truck for some reason that's driving hundreds of miles a day and there's no zero emission or near zero emission vehicle that has that range, that could potentially be a daily usage exemption scenario. Infrastructure construction delay means that you don't have the infrastructure like EV chargers or power to the site where that vehicle parks to power the vehicle. So you can kind of delay or extend compliance in those infrequent cases. A backup vehicle is categorized as a vehicle that drives less than 1,000 miles per year. You can keep as many vehicles in your fleet as you want that are backup, as long as they don't exceed 1,000 miles per year. So this, in the near term, when folks are a little bit more concerned about range and having enough charging infrastructure or having enough power to the site, sometimes we're recommending keep a couple of gasoline-powered backup vehicles kind of parked in the back of the lot and use those in the case of a scenario where you don't have the range or fueling infrastructure to charge your vehicle. And then finally, mutual aid vehicle exemptions. And these are for vehicles that are needed and required for mutual aid services. So that's probably a lot of the folks on this call being city and county governments. I'm sure you've got some vehicles in your fleet that are dedicated to mutual aid. And then we also have exclusions. So just because we're talking about medium and heavy duty vehicle doesn't mean that we're talking about some of these more emergency or specific use vehicles. So emergency vehicles that are categorized as emergency by the California Vehicle Code are exempt. That's police, fire, et cetera. School buses, transit buses, those are both impacted by different regulations that do promote electrification over the next decade or so, but not advanced clean fleets. And then you'll see the rest of the vehicles on this list that are not impacted by advanced clean fleets. So dedicated snow removal vehicles, that probably doesn't affect 3CE territory all that much. And then we've got the heavy cranes and two-engine trucks and workover rigs. So some of those bigger, much more specialty equipment are not impacted. Reporting is something we're going to get into in detail more in the next webinar. So I'll give you a little teaser here. The state and local government fleets must submit an initial report. So if you haven't done that, you should probably look into it, talk to your fleet manager, and make sure that gets in. It's using the truckers portal, which is CARB's usual portal for a lot of vehicle reporting. So it's likely familiar to your agency. Exemption or extension requests can be submitted by email right now, although we did just today, some guidance from CARB came out. So I think when, Judy, when we send out these slides, we should add a couple of links to the recent announcements from CARB. And then year round, new vehicle additions, removals, or fuel conversions have to be reported to CARB within 30 days of that vehicle becoming active or taken out of the fleet. So just be aware of that. It's going to require some ongoing management in the truckers portal. And with that, Judy, would you like to tell everyone on the call about the programs?
Absolutely. So that is wrapping up the session for today. And On your screen, you can see the three programs that Natalie mentioned earlier that 3CE offers to help our member agencies manage fleet electrification, starting with Plan Your Fleet, and then Electrify to help pay for the vehicles and Charge to help pay for the infrastructure. So please do reach out, get in touch with me if your agency is interested in participating. And I thank you all. Can I have the next slide? I thank you all
Yes.
for joining us today in the second webinar in our fleet electrification series. I hope you found the session valuable and that it provided you with some insights into complying with the EV mandates that you're all facing, and that we've made the prospect of compliance seem a bit more manageable. As I mentioned, this is just the beginning of a series designed to guide and support you throughout your electrification journey. So I want to encourage you to join us for upcoming webinars. We're hosting one a month over 8 months. We're going to dive deeper into funding and case studies that could directly benefit your fleet planning efforts. And before we wrap up, I just want to mention that there will be an exit survey you will see in your browser window once you exit this webinar. Your feedback is incredibly important as it will help us improve future sessions and ensure that we are addressing the most relevant topics for you. And I'd love to hear any recommendations or suggestions that you have for upcoming webinars. So thank you again. Oh, let's
Take some
open it up for
questions.
questions. Are there any questions? Sorry, Natalie.
Okay.
We're ready to go. Raise your hand if you have a question and we will. No,
See if
what do
we
we
got it on
have
the next
here?
slide for
We
you.
do have
There's
one
Judy's
Q&A.
contact info. You
Oh, yes, there you go.
can see Judy's contact
Thank you,
info
Steve.
on screen.
Yeah,
Yep, you got it.
great. Okay. That's and that's it in Q&A. No hands are raised. So if you don't have a question, thank you for participating today, and I hope to see you next month for our next session.